Okay, so we're gonna go into the questioning, and we'll be going through Quokka's past, their present, and their future. So to start off, Gabe, how did you guys? Where was the trigger? What were your first steps? How did this happen?
Yeah. So, basically how it all started is we were in the library, we were studying for finals, and, we were drinking a lot of coffee. We were drinking maybe 2, 3 cups of coffee a day, maybe drinking other energy drinks. And we noticed we were getting super jittery. We were getting like really anxious, jittery. And then a couple hours later, we would crash. And, it was just kind of annoying. Like we were just like, okay, we can't get the work that we need to get done. And at the end of the day, we would always feel really bad. Like, we just like, okay, I wasn't as optimally focused as I could be. I felt like I had a lot of energy, but it wasn't really concentrated energy. It was just kind of sporadic energy. And so we talked about it and we are like, okay, there has to be a better solution, better solution to coffee, to these energy drinks that will really give us the energy that we need to really push through finals and do well on our tests. And so we looked out into the market. We found there was a bunch of, like bulletproof coffee, super coffee, all these functional coffees. We tried them, but they didn't really do it for us. We didn't think like, okay, this is really the answer. So we went to the drawing board and we said, hey, look, if this is not on the market, if other people can't give us this product, then we're going to make it ourselves. And after around 5 months of, on the drawing board, just trying to figure out exactly the amino acids and the nootropics and the vitamins that we could put into this coffee to make it as optimized as possible. And after 5 months, we created the blend, and that's, Quokka Brew was born.
That sounds really cool. So George, how do you guys tackle people who didn't believe you guys?
Yeah, I mean, like starting out, it was definitely an uphill battle having to convince people. Like, first of all, like a lot of people knew this problem existed. So I think convincing people and then showing people that like we're the team that can accomplish this definitely wasn't easy. I think for us, it was really showing them by proof of like letting them experience it for themselves. Like for when people doubted our product or like our ability to do it, be like, okay, well, try what we created and make your own decision then. So I think really just like first of all, like not caring what people said to us because there's always going to be the haters, the people that don't believe in you. So just like understanding that they exist and that's fine. Like it doesn't like the people that don't believe in us isn't going to affect my ability to believe in myself and what we're doing. And also like genuinely creating a product that's good and works.
So when you guys had like significant lows or highs, how did you cope?
Mhm.
Following up with George.
Oh, I mean, you know, that's one of the things that's really difficult about a startup. Because you go through this essentially roller coaster almost daily, where you go to these amazing highs and these terrible lows. One of the quotes that I think has been like pushing me through it is like never over celebrate the wins, and never like mourn over the losses. Essentially, if you think about just staying constant, like like patting yourself on the back when good things happen, but also like not getting down on yourself when things don't go your way. So being like level headed through stressful situations and also through, extremely positive situations as well has been kind of our philosophy throughout this.
So Gabe, how did you guys? What did you guys have to sacrifice, if anything, to get to where you are?
Well, a lot of free time. Um, as college students, you like to explore, you like to go have fun with your friends, and you like to try new things. And my freshman, sophomore year, I was doing a lot, but I wasn't like really focusing in on one specific thing, which I think is great. A good breadth of experiences is definitely a really good thing to do while you're at college, if any time in your life. But my junior and senior year, I started to realize like, okay, I've been doing all these amazing things, but I really want to start focusing. I want to really pour my energy and my heart into one thing that I truly love. And luckily enough, Quokka Brew became an opportunity at just the right time for me. And the things that I did have to sacrifice, unfortunately, were doing some of the other things that I love to do. I was on the club soccer team. I had to sacrifice that. That was taking up too much of my time. I was involved with interfaith on campus, and I had to kind of take some time off of that, as well as just I guess going to all the parties I wanted to, I couldn't really do that. I had to really wake up early in the morning and really work. But at the end of the day, you know, I don't really see them as sacrifices. I think I'm just pouring my energy into something that is going to be better for me in the long run. So I didn't really look at it as a negative. I just like, okay, this is a change, and I'm willing to do it, and I want to do it.
Did you guys have anyone that really inspired you guys to keep going, George?
Yeah. I mean, I honestly had a very supportive, I think both myself, my co-founder Ofek, and Gabe had like amazing like families that definitely like, you know, were there for us when things got tough, gave us like kind of words of affirmation. On top of that, one of the other benefits that we have is just like a really well-connected network. So basically just like we were the type that would just cold email a bunch of different founders of successful companies and kind of get on calls with them, and really just connect with them. And I think whenever we ran into problems that we had no idea how to solve, which honestly, there's a lot of those when you're starting out a new company in a new space where you don't really know as much of what you're doing. That was incredibly helpful for us. So like when we'd run into something that we had like didn't know how to do, like accounting or the barcode on a can, having those like mentors and people in our network that can like point you in the right direction. Like the barcode on the can was the most confusing thing to us. That was something that we were hung up on for so long, but it was so simple. So having like those people in our network was incredibly valuable.
So Gabe, did you guys have any intended strategies before you guys actually launched Quokka? And now that you've gone through so much, what are some of your real life strategies that have come to light?
Yeah, I mean, so our founding principles are still intact. We're a beverage that was made by students for students, and we still hold that true to this day. And one of the main strategies was always going to be surrounded by college campuses and by students. And we have stayed pretty true to that strategy. And you know, we're really building a company, we're building a brand, but we're also hoping to build a community. And that is something that has been really important to me. I know it's been really important to George and the you know, our other founding team members. And I still believe that if you build a community of the right people that surround you and your brand, then there's no reason that anything should fail. If you have the right people around, it should be good. And that has been a main strategy, I would say, is just finding those right people, building that community, staying on college campuses, and expanding outwards from there. And yeah, I would say that's still pretty much our strategy.
All right, sounds cool. So, what skills did you guys develop early in your career? So, like hard skills, soft skills. I'd like to start with George and then Gabe.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about starting a company is that in the early days, you're the person, you guys, like the initial team are the people that do everything. So for us, it was picking up things we had no idea what we were doing at all. I think that also came in the form of like understanding like how to navigate like forming a company, how to set up like a business bank account, like all of those kind of things that no one ever teaches you. So that was, and I think helpful as well. And also just like being resourceful. I think that like when you run into things and you get to points where you feel like you have nothing, understanding like which direction you can go, is really helpful. And also like learning how to talk to people in order to like connect with them and understand like how to form connections intentfully. Because networking at the end of the day is like a skill in a lot of ways. So like understanding how to best do that, I think that was one of the things that we learned pretty early on as well.
Mhm. Yeah. And I totally agree with everything George just said. I think that a lot of soft skills, really, which surprised me. You know, you think that when you do something like this, you're going to need to have like a lot of really analytic skills and like a lot of really, you know, hard skills. But I think those soft skills, like really just communication, being able to communicate really effectively so that everyone in your environment understands you completely. Because I found that the biggest problems arise when not everyone fully understands your intent or, you know, the direction that you're trying to move in. If everyone's on the same page, if everyone has full understanding, things generally work pretty well. So you know, I think communication is a really important skill, and it's a hard one. It's definitely hard. I thought I was good at it before, but I was proved wrong, and I've had to really develop that skill.
Also, time management. That's one I forgot too. Time management is like one of the most important things because like those 2 hours that TikTok sucks you in, like those are 2 hours that you can be productive with. So like for us, like being able to manage our time effectively is super important.
All right. So one of the last questions from the past is, what has been more valuable, Gabe, in your life? So career, your education, or your experience?
Well, I would say experience are, from all of them, like the experience of my education. I would say education has been really important, not just for what I've learned in the classroom, but really from what I've learned from my peers. And from yet again communicating effectively with the people in my environment. This whole company started from not what we were, I guess, because we were studying for our education, but because of how we came together and communicated our problems. It was an untalked about problem. I think a lot of people experience the problem of the jitters, the crash, the anxiety that can come with coffee, but it wasn't communicated before that. So, that communication and talking about, okay, these are the problems and these are what we want to solve. That experience of, not necessarily in our career in education, but just like coming together and having like a breakthrough moment, has been really valuable. Yeah, so I'm not really sure if that answered your question at all, but I would say that's probably it.
Yeah, that was amazing. So we're gonna be moving on to the present of you guys of Quokka, and I'm gonna hand the floor over to Cecilia.
Thank you so much. It's been so interesting to listening to this first part, to hear about how you started out and your thoughts about that. But I want to start off this part by talking a little bit about finances, because that's obviously a main thing when you're starting a business. So can you just, George, go over a little bit about what did you wish, or what do you wish, did you wish now that you knew before starting a company in regards to finances?
So also just like background on this. So having like being a well-financed company that has really strong financials is one of the most important things for a startup. In terms of things I wish I knew in the beginning that I know now, I don't think that I would change anything, just because when we were starting out Quokka, we were like so naive in a way to like how expensive it would be and how difficult it would be. We like bootstrapped the company up until kind of right until this point, honestly. So like financed it with like, I took out an additional college loan to really like start the business off and kind of things along those lines. And we just funded the company by the money that we were making from sales. Definitely save money. I think we saw like be very, very intentional with every dollar you ever spend on your company. For us, like we were a business that went through COVID. And I think that's like one of the things that's going to be kind of like a thing very few companies in the future to be able to say. Just because with COVID, we saw a lot of really great companies just get wiped out by like these unknown unknowns. And we saw companies that were kind of preparing for disasters and had those like emergency funds like actually gain traction and grow in the face of COVID. So planning for like worst case scenario and just keeping like keeping a couple a little bit more money than you ever expect you'll need just like in your savings, I think is the biggest thing.
Awesome. And Gabe, what would you say is the main thing that you're actually spending money on?
Yeah, so I mean, the name of the game in the CPG space, in the consumer packaged goods space, is volume. It's really about moving a lot of product and then growing and hitting economies of scale so that you can get more product for less cost. It's very different if you're going to be doing a startup in tech or if you're going to be doing a startup, in any other field. But specifically for what we're doing, in the CPG space, we're spending a lot of money on our inventory, on the product, on Quokka Brew, because we know that first and foremost, we're going to be able to get more product the more that we sell, so we can actually scale and grow exponentially. But that we could also do samples. a terminology that we like to use is liquid to lips. Getting people to really try our product and to love our product is very valuable for us. So, really having all that inventory on hand is super, super important, and something that we spend, I would say, a majority of our money on.
I actually have a follow-up on that for you, Gabe, because you said that scaling is an important thing to keep it cost productive. Do you see any other opportunities to make your company more efficient?
Yeah. There's a lot of ways to make a company more efficient. And it really comes from developing really good connections. So for us, we're getting a lot of products from our co-packer, but we also need to have a fast turnaround time. Say, for instance, if someone came to us and said, hey, we need like 100,000, units of product in the next 2 weeks, or like we can't do business with you. That's a scaling opportunity for us where we can really make a huge impact, but we need a fast turnaround time. And the efficiency comes from being able to get that supply and, work that synergistically with our co-packer so that we can get it on time. So, making those connections and having really good connections with your suppliers, with your co-packers, with your, shipping or logistics company is really important for scale. That efficiency is very important.
And another question for you, George. For right now, you're focusing on one product, and I know that you have more products coming up, hopefully pretty soon. How are your thoughts about that to keep it cost productive but still managing multiple different kinds of products?
Yeah, definitely. And this is in full transparency. It's something we're still working through right now. Because if you think about it, kind of what Gabe was saying, in economies of scale, the more products you produce, the cheaper each individual product gets. The problem is when you add on additional like products, it's you're kind of back at that lower level. So for us, it's figuring out like how many of each we can produce, because we don't want to have one that we make a lot of money on and one that we make like a minimal amount of money on. So it's just balancing it, and also just understanding like we're essentially in the business of growing our company right now. So it's making sure that we're like most efficiently allocating every dollar we're putting in the company, in the sense that with each dollar we put in, we get $2 back or $3 back. But we do have intentions to launch like a black variant and a mocha or a hazelnut later this year. And then eventually going into like K-cups, beans, and a whole list of things.
That's super exciting. So Gabe, I know that George mentioned earlier how important time management is, and to keep a work-life balance, like long term. How do you juggle that? Like, how can you run a business and have a life?
Yeah. So when you're starting your own company, that is a very, very hard task. For a large part of it, you're going to have to make sacrifices, as we already talked about. And some of those sacrifices have to maybe be like, okay, I'm not going to take this weekend off for myself. And you need to know what your limits are, obviously, because you don't want to burn out. But at the same time, you need to have your priorities. And your priorities, if you're starting a business, should be that business. That being said, there is a very fine line here, because at an early stage of a company, you really are the business. So if you're not taking care of yourself, you're also not taking care of the business. One thing that I will say that has worked for our team very well is time blocking. So really being very mindful about the time in your day, maybe doing it the night before, really early in the morning, and saying like, okay, I'm going to allocate this amount of time for this. And I'm just going to focus on this. I'm not going to focus on anything else. I'm not going to check my email. I'm not going to check my phone, just focusing on this. And then the time is up, take a 5-minute break, you focus on the next thing. And if you can do that very effectively, and there's no other crazy, extraneous circumstances popping up, then you can also allow yourself for a workout, or, to go walk on the beach, or to do something for yourself. But it really all comes back to time management. If you're being very effective and diligent, then you can also allocate time for yourself. If you're not, then you're gonna be in a whole world of hurt.
Those are very good advice. So George, what do you do at work on a daily basis?
It really varies. I mean, our day to day is shifting like virtually every day. As weird as that sounds. Right now we're going through we're raising money from investors, so a lot of my day is spent on talking to investors, working on documents for them. But then at the same time, we're also focused on growing the business and like continuing to, continue to sell coffee. So it's also like focusing on like what can we do to like grow sales and like where are our weak points and where can we improve upon those. So it's kind of all over the place. Like I'm kind of focusing on a lot of different areas all at once.
Yeah, and I'll also answer that question because I'm doing something a little bit different. I'm really focusing on the campus ambassador program, as you may know, but really spending a lot of time trying to optimize the program on the campuses that we currently are on with our over 200 brand ambassadors in California, and trying to really, see if we can replicate this same program in other states and hopefully expand it to the rest of the United States. So that's where I'm spending a majority of my time.
Sounds a lot more fun than mine.
So Gabe, I know that when you're running a business, it can kind of become your baby. How do you separate your feelings from when you're making difficult decisions?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. It's important to know that every decision that you make is going to have repercussions. And you want to make sure that each decision you make is in the best interest of the company and not necessarily just yourself. Because you'll be faced with times where you're like, oh, I don't really want to do that, but I know I have to do that for the company. And there's also a little bit of a problem here. When you come to start talking to investors and VCs and people that are going to start to take, percentages of the company because you need to scale and you need that cash. If you make it too much of your baby, you're going to have a very hard time of letting go of, a percentage or 2% or 3%. But it's probably, or it might be, depending on the situation, in the best interest of your company. So although you don't want to do it, you know that you should do it. And yeah, it's tough. It's really hard because you grow this thing from like this little baby and then it starts to grow and it's like, oh, it's my baby. But you have to make sure that you're always looking forward and you're not, looking back.
Those are really good advice. And George, I know that Quokka Brew has a very very fun work environment and a great culture. But how do you go about and really create that motivation for your coworkers?
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy. I guess it's like one way to put it. Like culture is something that doesn't live on its own. It's created. And I know for us, like when we were first starting out the business, is we wanted a place where like we actually enjoyed working, first of all, like somewhere where we felt that we were appreciated, that our ideas that we felt were good were implemented, and the ones that weren't good, that like the consensus was they're not going to be implemented, like we understood why, and it was like very fair and judicious. So really, I think just like focusing on where do you want to work and how could you make that happen. But at the end of the day, like it's not easy and it's very intentional. It comes with a lot of honesty and being open to everyone you work with about the way that you're feeling. And like when people have we do this thing at Quokka, like extreme honesty is what we call it. So it's like if someone does something that I think is like wrong or that I think we shouldn't do things like that, I'd have a very open and honest conversation with them. And I think for us, like that's one of the reasons we've grown so close together and the reason we've been able to kind of go through all the hardships and trials that we've been through, is just having like that trust and that, I guess, the culture of we're all on the same page of building something amazing, and we're not going to get there if we're not open and honest with each other and enjoy what we're doing every day. Because kind of what Gabe said, like you do have to sacrifice a lot, and no one wants to sacrifice, their weekends and Christmas and stuff like that if they're not passionate about what they're doing.
Yeah, definitely. And this is a follow-up question, and I think that you both can answer this. Like, how do you are your core values reflected in your employees and your brand ambassadors?
Yeah, I think that one of our like biggest things is just like be creative, have like for us like some of our craziest wild ideas that like any like rational corporation would say like absolutely no way that is ever going to be implemented. Those are the ones we typically implement and the ones that we see do the best. So I think for us like having those random sporadic decisions or not decisions but ideas be respected, and if they're good enough be implemented. I think that's one of my core values, and that's one of the things that we see implemented a lot in Quokka Brew.
Yeah,
That's
and I
awesome.
would say another core value that we hold very near and dear to our hearts is, you know, going beyond yourself, stepping outside of your comfort zone, and really pushing yourself and letting yourself grow. And one way that we found this to be really interesting is, you know, at UC Berkeley, at Cal Poly SLO, at Santa Barbara, something that we were doing before COVID was we were tabling. And we would be out there on campus and we would be sampling product, we'd be talking to people. And one thing that we really heard from a lot of our, you know, audience and, you know, fellow students was that they loved the energy. They could really feel that there was a really positive energy surrounding the brand. And the people that were tabling weren't just forced to table. They really wanted to table because they thought that they were helping their community. And that's what we really believe in, you know, stepping outside of your comfort zone, doing something that you maybe wouldn't normally do, but doing it so that you can grow, so that you can learn from it and, you know, help people along the way, and do it with a lot of energy and a lot of good intention.
Yeah, I remember being at the table just screaming, "Is coffee a soup? Tell me I'm wrong." And people coming up and talking to us about that. So it's yeah, like I think Gabe's point is really true of just stepping outside your comfort zone.
I think that that's a discussion that you can have with Angela later. uh, okay, so one last question for this present section. And this is also for both of you, but how do you make sure to continue and plan for your own professional development in the future?
Yeah, Gabe, if you want to start on this one, then I'll go second.
For sure. Yeah. So I think something that we've done at Quokka since the beginning, and something that we still do now is really valuable, is that we are always trying to push ourselves professionally. As I said earlier, this company, a startup company in general, is really about its people. And if you're not, you know, developing or growing as fast as your company, you're going to be left behind, and in sooner or later, the company is going to start to suffer because of it. So something that we do is we're constantly reading. We always, you know, make enough time to do some sort of learnings on our own, and then we'll come back together during meetings and we'll actually talk about those learnings. And something that George always says, sorry, George, I'm going to take it from you, but a rising tide, you know, brings all boats up. I did not say that correctly, George. You said that earlier. A rising tide lifts all ships. So, you know, if we're all progressing each other individually and then we're bringing it to each other in a group setting, you know, we all think that we can be above that curve. We can all be growing just as fast as our company, if not faster.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm basically just gonna echo exactly what Gabe said. Like we I think at Quokka Brew we're like all like bookworms essentially. So we're all constantly reading. I think that's been one of like the biggest things that we've gotten from this business. It's just like you can learn so much. A lot of the things that we've implemented that have worked really well for us, we found in books or articles. So constantly looking and trying to grow. As weird as it sounds, like if in order to be great, you have to first want to be great, if that makes any sense. And also one of the things that one of our mentors has told us is like, if you want to run $1 billion brand, if you want to be $1 billion COO or CEO or CX, whatever, you have to be that. Like you have to try to grow. You have to grow faster than the business.
I'm gonna write that down. Have like above my bed or something, so I can watch it every day. It's really good. So I'm gonna hand it over to Angela again, and she will continue to ask you a little bit about the future.
All right, so I'm gonna throw this one at George. What is your best advice for other people who want to start their own company?
That's a good one. I think for my so my co-founder Ofek and I, we've launched 4 or 5 businesses together over the last 7 years since I've known him, since middle school. I think the biggest thing that's held us back in some of our ideas, not in Quokka, thankfully, is just starting. Like for instance, like when we were launching Quokka Brew, we had no background in the coffee industry. We had no idea what we were doing. Gabe can attest to this. We all had no idea anything about this space. So from like a rational perspective, it made no sense for us to start a coffee company. But I think for us, it's just like, you just have to start, even if you have no idea what you're doing, like start looking for information, like start by starting essentially. Because you'll learn kind of on the job, if that makes sense. So I think my number one advice is just start.
So kind of like just take the first step.
Just take the first step. Like that is the most difficult thing a lot of the times. But if you never take that first step, you're never going to go on the journey. So it's just taking that first step that matters.
So what was like your moment of like just taking the leap of faith?
Yeah, I think it's tough because when we had the idea, we kind of did some research on it. I bought a coffee machine. We had to like buy a espresso machine in my apartment. We were just pulling shots on putting in little like plastic cups that we were buying from like Walmart or something. And I remember like when we were first wanting to like scale up, like we found this glass bottle supplier and we like bought them from like Kentucky and they were like $300. And we're like, dang, do we like really want to do this? This is like a huge investment. But we were like, do you know what? Like we're going to regret this if we don't at least try. So we just kind of gave it a shot.
So Gabe, do you guys have any future stumbling blocks that you can foresee now? Or are there any like what are some problems that you see in the future with your company?
Yeah, so it opens up kind of a bigger question, and something that George actually talks about a lot is you have 3 circles of knowledge. You have like your known knowns, you have your known unknowns, and then you have your unknown unknowns, things that you don't even know. And those are the ones that usually slap you in the face the hardest. So future stumbling blocks, my known unknowns are things that I kind of know that might be a problem. Um, I don't really have too many of those because I think that's how we plan. Like we plan strategically so that we don't plan for these problems. So I don't really have anything to really say about that. But the problems that I can't foresee, those are going to be the real stumbling blocks, and those happen more often than I would like them to. And something that Bill Gates actually does religiously is he doomsday plans. He basically plans all of the worst situations that could happen, and then how could he, mitigate? How can you mitigate the downside? And that's something that we constantly do at Quokka Brew. Before anything important happens, we doomsday plan it. We come up with all these contingency plans, and then we hope for the best. And more times than not, things go wrong. But we're prepared, and the downside is saved. We don't really have that big of a downside because we plan for it. So to answer your question, I don't really have an answer, but I hope that was at least helpful.
No, that was good. So it's just adaptability, right?
Exactly. Yeah, you got to be flexible.
All right. So George, what kind of people do you want to be working with in your company? You want them to be adaptable for sure, right? But do you guys have like a specific type of person that you see?
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question. I think for us at Quokka Brew, anyone that like cares enough and was going to put in the work. It doesn't matter how much experience you have, where you went to school, what your GPA was. My GPA was terrible. It's really just those that are willing to put in the work and like willing to say like, you know what, I don't know how to do this, but I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to do whatever it takes to make it happen. So those are the type of people that like are worth their weight in gold essentially, because those are the people that like are going to, grow with you as you grow the business and like propel the business forward.
Okay, George, I'm sorry I'm going to have to bother you again, but where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Like me personally or like Quokka?
Yeah, so you personally and then the Quokka company.
That's a tough one. Hopefully with longer hair. I don't know. I think for me, like I love talking to people. I love like being connected to different people in the space. So continuing to like meet more people, hopefully in person, as well as just continuing to learn. My goal is to be one of the most like well-read people on earth. Obviously, I don't think it's going to happen, but I'm going to do my best to make it happen. But I think like my goal is just to be like happy, loving this business and growing it. And then I think my goals for Quokka in 5 years. That's a fun question. I think for like Gabe, I feel like we probably have the same answer on this, but just for us to be the most powerful coffee company in the college space, like we want to be the go-to beverage on every campus in the United States. I think in 5 years and beyond, obviously like retail, grocery, places like that as well. But I think like the strongest coffee company in the college space.
All right, Gabe. So, what has been like the craziest idea of a collab with you guys' company? Like, for example, maybe collaborating with like a game company or something like that, or just having like some sort of cameo or in a movie, or what's like your most fantasized like collab?
A collab with Post Malone for sure. Post Malone, if you're hearing this, hit me up. But I would say, yeah, I think, doing a collab with Post Malone would be really fun. Who else? George, do you have any answers to this?
In terms of like our dream partner, like celebrity partner, was The Rock. We felt The Rock like perfectly embodied our brand of having like this, I guess not in the sense that he's like a big scary guy, but he's just like such a fun, like loving person. So we thought he would be like the perfect spokesperson for us. So doing anything with The Rock, we felt like would be perfect. We actually have this thing in our terms of service on our website, that The Rock is entitled to 1 free 6-pack of Quokka Brew every 6 months. We're just waiting for him to find it. I don't think he's ever going to, but maybe.
That's really funny. So, how did you guys like set clear goals, or what are some of the goals that keep developing and then are going to keep growing in the future?
Yeah, I think that goal planning is one of the most important things. I know for us, like we wanted like our Indiegogo campaign, like we really, really wanted to hit $25,000. Like we were gonna like make that happen no matter what. We ended up hitting $70,000, so we kind of blew past that goal. But just like outlining what you want to happen and having it be like just outside what you feel like you can comfortably get, or outside what you think is even in the range of possibilities, and kind of like doing in reverse, like reverse engineering that happening. So for instance, like we want to hit $1 million in sales next year. What do we have to do to make that happen? How many cans do we have to sell per day? How much money do we need in the bank to produce all those cans, and kind of make the changes that need to happen to have that happen?
All right, Gabe. So, why did you guys want to? What is? Why would you work for your own company instead of working for another?
Yeah, no, I'm happy you asked. I think, working for yourself is very fulfilling. Um, Working for your own dreams, your own aspirations, and your own goals, as George just kind of said, like we're coming up with our own goals. Like we want to reach $1 million in sales next year. That's like what we want to do. That's not what someone else wants to do. So really going after our own dreams, our own goals, and actually hitting those goals, or even coming close to hitting those goals, it's a really good feeling. I've worked for other people in the past. I've had internships, I've had other jobs, and not to say anything bad about them. I thought they were great and I thought I learned a lot. But at the end of the day, I was doing it for someone else. I was doing it for someone else's dreams, for someone else's goals. And when I left work at the end of the day, like I was doing it, I didn't necessarily feel fulfilled. But doing something for yourself, um, at the end of the day, you're tired, you worked really hard, but you have a sense of like, okay, like, I'm taking the steps necessary to fulfill my dreams and my goals. And that's a great feeling.
What about you, George? Do you have any take on that?
Yeah, kind of just the idea of like building your own dreams. Like it's cool to like wake up every morning and like say like what, like you hold kind of your destiny in your own hands in a lot of ways. Like, if we all decide to stop working tomorrow, Quokka is not going to grow. But it's like if tomorrow we wake up and we're like, we're going to make this grow, then like it will grow. So I think having just total control over your future, as much as you humanly can, essentially, and being able like to be the one that like makes decisions about it, I think, to dictate your own future. And on top of that, like building a company is just fun. Like it's a lot of time and effort that goes into it. But at the end of the day, like it's tough to describe the feeling of like creating something from scratch and seeing it like kind of grow up in a way and morph and become this like beautiful creature in a way.
So moving forward to the future, how do you guys intend to maintain your company culture? Like, do you want it to be a bit more dynamic, or do you guys like the way it is right now?
I think with our company culture, I think it's as you scale it by nature kind of evolves. So I think it's trying to be intentional with the way that, you know, we're treating each other as well as like treating like the business as a whole, and taking like the necessary steps in order to make sure that like all of us are happy, all of us are doing like the things that we actually love to do, and at the end of the day, like enjoy doing this. I want to continue doing it. So really just like continuing our culture of like honesty and like being open with each other.
So sorry, George, but this one's for you too. And when do you know that you've been successful? Like, what is your soft cap, or when is that moment going to happen where you can sit back and say, I finally did it. I'm good. This is nice. I'm just gonna be cruising.
Yeah, I don't know. I think one of the my characteristics as like a person is like I think I constantly feel like I haven't done enough. I think success isn't like necessarily a binary thing. Like I don't think there's like a yes or like I'm successful or I'm not. I think that it's kind of like is a lot of a gray area, because in a lot of ways, like where Quokka is at now, like I feel like it's been definitely been a success, but like are we done? Like are we even close to done? Like absolutely not. So I think like success is being happy what you're doing and like doing something that's good, that's positively impacting the world. Like it's not, you know, dollar signs or fancy cars and big houses and fancy meals. It's doing what you love.
Gabe, what's your take on that question?
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with what George just said. I feel like success is enjoying the journey. It's not an end destination. If you kind of have like this kind of success in mind as like an end destination, I don't think you'll ever truly be happy. I think that it's necessary to enjoy the steps along the way. If you're doing that, then you're successful.
All right, so I think that concludes our discussion portion. I'm gonna bring it back to this, and so we have a discount code for Quokka, right, George, Gabe, and
Yeah,
this is their website. Actually, if you could post that in the chat.
I'll type it out right now.
And so we're gonna go into a Q&A session really shortly. Cecilia, do you mind reading the first question?
Yeah, of course. So the first question that is from the audience is, what are like the little things that make you happy?
I'll start with this one, Gabe, if you want to take it also. For me, I think the little things that make me happy is like, I think outside of Quokka, I like plants, as weird as that sounds. Like, I don't know if you guys can tell from my background, but like having like plants, I think is something that is cool to me, as well as like cooking. But I think in terms of Quokka, it's just like when a customer or someone that has tried Quokka, like will email me or message me and say like, hey, like, I just want to let you know, like, I loved your product. Like things like that, like make me happy.
Yeah, and I would say with my like personal life, things that make me happy, nature. I really love just being outside and with nature and being kind of away from the world a little bit sometimes. Surfing, I think, is great. Hiking's great. I love traveling. Those are, my family, my girlfriend. These are all things that make me very happy. With Quokka Brew, though, I would say the one thing that makes me the happiest is when I hear from people how much Quokka has helped them personally. For a lot of people, they can't drink coffee. They get really jittery, they get really anxious, but they do it anyways because they feel like they need to for their school or for their work. But when they're given Quokka Brew as an option, and to hear what they have to say about it, like some of these incredible stories of like how it kind of changed their lives. Like they can have all this energy and they can have, these feelings of concentration and really get what they need to get done. And that for me is very, very fulfilling. Just to know that I've helped even one person is definitely a great feeling.
Ryan had a question for George. What keeps you motivated, and how do you motivate others?
Yeah, so motivation's a very interesting thing because it kind of comes from like inside you in terms of like really what motivates me, I think in a lot of ways. It's just the pursuit of like wanting to build something that has its own legacy that kind of lives outside of me. Like I want one day for some people to like know Quokka but have no idea who I am. Like that is like my ultimate goal. So I think just the pursuit of like wanting to build something that lives on. In terms of I think motivating others, that's another interesting thing that's really important. I think it's showing like your vision of what you like are seeing like the future look like, and showing how you're going to get there and why it's important to get there. Like I think explaining the why of things is like the most important thing of like kind of what Gabe was talking about, like why Quokka Brew exists and why it needs to exist. I think that's like a necessary component.
Awesome. I had a question for both, but we can start with George. When you studied college, what was your dream job, or what did you want to do after?
So I actually went into college like having no idea at all what I wanted to do. I knew that like I'd done entrepreneurial things in the past. If the opportunity presented itself, I would love to continue doing that. I think in the span of college, I worked on 3 or 4 separate businesses prior to Quokka. So I was always looking for like that thing that I could do, that solution. But in terms of like a professional career, I came into college like having no idea. Part of me wanted to go into like the consulting space or the banking space, but no like real like I'm gonna graduate and I'm gonna go do this. So it really went in with like an open mind, if that makes any sense.
That's good. How about you, Gabe?
Yeah, so kind of similar to George, actually. I was kind of up in the air between becoming a doctor or be doing something in business. And I kind of learned early on that I really liked consulting. Consulting was really appealing to me. And so for like 2 years out of college, I was like, okay, I'm dead set on becoming a consultant. Like that's what I want to do. And then, I always kind of had an open mind and I was always willing to take chances and new opportunities into account. So yeah, so when Quokka Brew happened, it wasn't like, oh no, I need to do consulting. It was like, okay, let's explore this. Let's see where it goes.
Ryan has a question for George. What was the biggest lesson you learned when starting Quokka Brew?
In terms of the biggest lesson, so this is an interesting one. It's the concept of who knows what's good or bad. So it's basically like when seemingly terrible things happen that actually end up having a profound positive impact in your business or your personal life. And when seemingly positive things happen, actually end up having a terrible impact on your life. So I think just not accepting things and not looking at things on their immediate impact and understanding like this bad thing that just happened to me could in a way end up having like super positive impacts on the future of my life and the future of my business. It's not easy to kind of happen or understand at the beginning because like, for instance, like, oh no, I just bumped my car into this person's car. Like that sucks, but it's like, who knows like why the universe made this happen and what the positives are going to be that come out of it. That's been like, even now, like it sucks. Like when something bad happens with Quokka or like my personal life or something along those lines is like getting past the initial pain or positive feeling that it brings on and understanding like this happened for a reason. There will be a positive or negative that comes out of it.
This is a question for both of you, but we can start with Gabe this time. What would you, or how do you find mentors? Like, what would you recommend people to do if they need to find mentors within the field that they want to start a business in?
Yeah, so it's the power of networking. Just trying to talk to as many people as you can. And really not just try and talk to them for like an end result, but just talking to them because you want to talk to them. They're interesting people. They have an interesting story. And that kind of really comes across. Like these people, when you're actually interested in them and their story and their experiences, they generally like you more, and they're more willing to help you. And they're also more willing to put you in touch with other people that can help you. So kind of my advice for getting started in that arena is going on LinkedIn. Just is as simple as going on LinkedIn and finding some people that are doing what you want to do or have done what you want to do, and just reaching out to them as, you know, as nicely as possible and be like, hey, like, I think that you're an amazing person. Like what you've done is really incredible. And I would love to have an informational interview with you just to talk to you about your experience. And, you know, a lot of times you're not going to get a response because that's what cold intros are all about. But, you know, you might have a couple responses, and from there, you know, it grows like, oh, now I'm going to put you in touch with these 4 people. So who knows? I think just shooting your shot is really important.
Yeah, I think like just echoing what Gabe's saying, like just shooting your shot. Like I remember I went to a conference back when in-person conferences were still a thing. This is like kind of in the infancy of Quokka. And I remember one of the people that was giving a lecture was like, after her lecture, she was sitting down and she was like just by herself. And I was like, I should go talk to her. Like I want to meet this person. I remember being like so scared and like honestly like visibly shaking, like thinking like, should I go over and like talk to this person? And ended up thinking, I'm like, yes, I need to do this. I need to do this. So it's just getting past like your comfort zone and just like doing like kind of like start by starting in a way. And the same thing with emailing. Like it's easy to make excuses like, oh, I feel like this person's not going to reply, or like I don't know what questions to ask them. Like just try it, and like you'll learn on the fly essentially.
And George, that person that you went to approach at that conference, who was that ending up being like a pretty good connection for us?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like it's someone that like I still speak with fairly regularly. They were like almost participated in our funding round this time and put us in contact with a lot of people that actually are potentially going to invest. So there's like, I still talk to this person pretty regularly.
Okay, well, I think that's going to conclude the event for tonight. Gabe, George, everyone else, thank you for coming so much. Again, 10% off first purchase with the link for Quokka Brew. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for coming, guys.
Yeah, thank you guys for having us. This was a blast.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you guys.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And feel free to reach out to either George and I over LinkedIn if you have any other questions or you just want to chat. You know, always happy to help out fellow entrepreneurs. So
yeah, I dropped my email in the chat as well, so feel free to shoot me over an email.
Yeah, I'll put mine as well.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.